I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm not sure how much further down my throat I can get this series, but fuck it. We're going to try. Let's go, baby.
Like, I hate wasted potential. That shit crushes your spirit. It really does. It crushes your spirit.
Okay, so before we get into the video, I'd just like to ask you all to like and subscribe, and also follow me on my Instagram. I've been dropping JJK call runs over there, so if you want to go support the Instagram on the homie right there, appreciate you. I think Chapter 9, holy moly, I think if Chapter 8 served to sort of set up and give us exposition here, Chapter 9 serves to answer a lot of the questions that Gege dropped. But he does it in a very indirect way that we're all very much used to here. But before that chapter kicks in, Gege and Yuji treat us to this nice little story of Yuka and Tsurugi interacting with Panda. And it turns out that Tsurugi liked the girl, and Yuka heard that while in school, who then goes and tells Panda, and then Panda brings it up to Tsurugi. Now, this little comic in and of itself is a playoff of the epilogue chapter with Yuka and Tsurugi when they get to meet Panda for the first time, or when I'm assuming when Panda meets them or interacts with them for the first time at the end of JJK. But to add into this, to add into all of my Jujutsu Kaisen, it's just a big cycle theory. Panda was also involved in trying to play matchmaker for Yuta and Maki way back in JJK 0, so swings and roundabouts, cycles. You're going to hear me say cycles within this video a lot, so take a shot every time I do. Anyway, we get to see the differences between humans and Sumerians, with Cross's narration continuing on from the previous chapter. Quote, the third eye of the Sumerians is the source of their Loro-Luca, which makes it an invaluable organ for any race. Only Lumelians wept from their third eyes when the Kalans perished. Other Sumerians only weep from their eye when they are born and when they die. A tear produced by their third eye is incredibly dangerous for the brain and may cause death. Now, there is a lot of information within that first panel, and I think it is also very vital to remember who is actually writing this story, because things like this can really come back quickly to just bite us in the ass. But let's get one thing clear. The third eye for these Sumerians here is the source of their Loro-Luca, which is their name for cursed energy, as we're used to calling it. But this fact alone makes it an invaluable organ for any race. Now, so the third eye of the Sumerians is the source of their Loro-Luca, and that is the name for their cursed energy source, as we're used to calling it, basically. But this fact alone makes this a very invaluable organ for any race. Now, right now, there is a possibility that the Sumerians are going to be used as an energy source, as this subject matter has already been explored way back in chapter 200 and 201, and it seems that it may be a similar sort of direction that we are heading into right now. Not only this, but Sumerians cry from their third eye, and when they are born, they die, they drop a tear, and this tear produced by the third eye is incredibly dangerous for the brain, which may cause death. Now, with these two statements, I think we not only have a cause for concern when it comes to possible issues arising for the Sumerians, but also a possible silver bullet for the Sumerians should things get out of control. I would be willing to bet that the story might progress in a way that sees a tear being used against one of the Sumerians at some point in the future, but I do need to point out the fact that it was stated that this is an invaluable organ for any race, meaning that if the humans learn that this is the source of their X energy and it can just be taken and used like that, potentially, very dangerous timings for the Sumerians right now. Anyway, moving further into the chapter, we are seeing the aftermath of the Display Chief's daughter being mauled by one of the Kailans here. Now, this old geezer says something very interesting. The Kailans were wiped out from Disconte land years ago, and a Kailan would never do this unless provoked by a Lumelian, which means we might be seeing a little bit of sabotage on our hands right here as to who and what the end goal is here. I'm not quite sure, because if only a Lumelian could sort of provoke a Kailan into doing this against the Desconte, how does that benefit a Lumelian? But I guess that's going to be one of those questions that Gege's just going to leave us with for interpretation, theory crafting wise, I guess. Now, it is revealed that this incident has possibly set the two sides into war. But before that war can break out, a duel challenge was issued. Quote, Sumeria is known to bestow political power to those who possess real strength. We're not exactly cannon fodder, but the Descutans are much stronger than we are. There will be a duel between chosen champions of both factions, and you may continue your crusade if you emerge victorious, but you also would be forced to concede to their demands without making a fuss. Now, in the last chapter, I made the prediction that you can tell the difference between the two sides of the Lumelians and the Descontes based on their appearance. The Lumelians have no horns and all of their eyes are aligned horizontally, whereas whereas the Descante have horns and one eye is aligned vertically, but I will swing back around to that in a second because I do think that is also important. Now, this group talk about the fight that is coming, and the fight between the two groups will be with the champions of their respective groups, which, for the Lemelians, just so happens to be Dura. Now, at the risk of sounding like a very broken record, Jujutsu Kaisen is once again going in cycles, because if you read this chapter and didn't think of anything else but Gojo vs Sukuna, or the prelude to Gojo vs Sukuna, then I don't know what to tell you. Even Dura's face is very reminiscent of Gojo's just before the fight. Even the vibes of everyone being confident in their win is also very reminiscent of Gojo vs Sukuna. Now, we move forward into the chapter a little bit more, and the day of the duel arrives is none other than Dabura himself, which does answer the question as to how these guys all came to be on the same side here. Duel day. Laying eyes on the discontent candidate made the Lumen warriors realize the truth. My heart ached, limbs went numb, and I felt my mind being clawed at. I'll never forget that horrific day. Now, I think the reactions from both Cross and Maru here are very, very interesting. Both Maru and Cross, when they first met Dura, held hostility towards him and even tried to attack him, Maru being the first to warm up to him, which was then shortly followed by Cross after seeing Dura's determination to build this canal, basically. And now it's Cross that we see panicking and shedding, you know, serious panic for Dura here and wanting to sort of protect him. And you can really see the positive impact that Dora has had on their lives and for them to feel the way that they do. Now, Dura and Dabura now share some words here, and it turns out that Dabura may not be the cold Sukuna-like being that we've been expecting, that me or you have been expecting here, because it turns out that the Skuntons have Dabura's sister being held hostage. Now, this adds a whole new spin into Dabura's character, and it completely subverted my expectations here, and I'm sure a lot of others, because it turns out that rather than Dabura mirroring Sukuna here, he may actually be mirroring Megami, potentially. Dabura's a man who sort of needs to do what he needs to do here in order to save his sister from being held captive by the Skuntons here, and Megami was also sort of on that same path. He was doing what he needed to do in order to save his sister. Now, you can see Dabura's uneasiness about being part of this duel. He's not a big fan of this, and Dura tells Dabura that he only has one thing to ask of him, and that is something, again, that we will get into a little bit later. Now, Dura goes on to give the crowd a bit of a history lesson, telling them that he understands that there is a war between them, and that the reason that they were exiled wasn't actually because of the Kalans, but rather because the Descante wanted the Muru mines. Now, Muru is a special ore that stores their energy, their Loraluka, basically. Now, upon reading this, I had two thoughts almost instantly. One, Muru reminded me heavily of that and Sekai from Kagurabachi. If you're familiar with the other series that I cover on this channel, that and Sekai is a mineral from an island that harnesses pure condensed spirit energy, basically, and is used to make the enchanted blades. And I feel like Muru is a very similar thing here, but I also find this kind of cool. I think it's really fun when mangaka just sort of yoink little aspects from each other's stories to sort of bolster their own stories. It's really cool. They just always take stuff from each other and just innovate on it. I really like that aspect of the mangaka industry, I guess. But two, part one to this little story here, there is a stone that Cross and Maru's father died clutching. Now, originally I theorized on the sort of metaphorical meaning of that stone, meaning like he was grasping a part of his house, something that he'd fought and died to protect. Now, I'm now of the belief, after seeing this, that this stone that was shown here was a little bit something more, and it was more like the Muru stones that we're being told about. But again, we will touch back on this a little bit later, because the Muru stones will be very, very important towards the end of this chapter. Now, we are also introduced to an unnamed Descante, who I think might be the chief, but who, as I mentioned before, he has three eyes, one aligned vertically. Now, earlier in this chapter, Cross mentioned how the third eye is used to store their energy, and also that the Descante are stronger than the Lumelians, but also how the Sumerians' culture is sort of one that values strength the most. Political power is given to those who wield true power, which made me take notice of this guy's appearance, because his third eye and his eyes in general are just completely different from everything that we have seen so far, which made me wonder if this dude stands to be even stronger than Dabura, if that's the case, because if Dabura would be the pinnacle of the Descantes, I can't imagine that he would just be easily manipulated by someone taking his sister hostage. I don't know, maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into this, but anyway, the chapter moves further and Dura continues his speech. Quote, "Religion was meant to guide our lives, not to be twisted into a cultural weapon of war. What we asked of you was not for you to respect our religion, but to respect our way of life, which was merely influenced by it. We are not that different. The same pulse pumps through all of us, so I ask you all to heed my call and save Lumelia. please accept us as your neighbors. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I think Gege choosing to write a story that ultimately boils down to refugees and a problem of immigration in today's current climate, I think is a very, very bold choice, one that I personally applaud. And I think from my privileged position, I think I can say he's handling it well. From what I'm reading, nothing comes across as tacky. It seems well handled, and I think choosing to tackle the topic of religion on top of that takes a certain amount of gumption, if you ask me. And I think no matter what religion you choose to follow, I think you can see the meaning in this message. We are all the same. We all bleed the same, and we all die the same. And I think that's ultimately what should give us all of our bonds here. And I think that's what Gege's trying to get at. Regardless, Dora does end up coming to lose this fight, losing in a sort of manner similar to Gojo also, with the fight being started and ending off-screen, even worse than Gojo, I guess. All we, the audience, are shown is the reactions and the beaten and bloodied pulp of the body of Dora here. And even the way the scene plays out is so extremely reminiscent of Gojo's final moments and the reactions from his students. Anyways, Muru, seeing Dora's demise here, tries to pounce into action almost immediately, but is quickly stopped by Cross. And Maru's expression in anger is due to him recognizing that Dabura didn't go all out on Dora here. And this is where the true extent of Dabura's character, I think, is revealed in one very simple line. I didn't want to hurt his face. Now, I think it's twice now in the series that Gege has done something really special with just one simple line of text that really stops you in your tracks, and it really makes you take the bigger picture into the story that's being told here. You can really feel the evolution of Gege as a writer in every chapter, and he and Yuji are just continuing to shine the spotlight on that more and more and more. But this line also did make me feel like Dabura feels more like a Broly character from Dragon Ball Super, like the new revamped Broly. Like, he's strong, but he's just sort of being used as a weapon and doesn't really want to hurt people. He's got a pure heart. That's kind of what I'm surmising here. I mean, he obviously looks really fucking menacing, but again, so too does Broly, but he's also a pure of heart dude. Now, this narration continues as Cross explains Dora and Dabura were actually really good friends, and they used to help each other to grow as warriors before the Lumelians were forced into exile. Now, Dora is the only person who knew what Dabura was truly capable of, since he didn't enjoy showing himself off. Now, this narration comes as the brothers are doing the funeral and the rites for Dora himself here, as we see him being laid to rest with a few tears falling from his third eye. Now, I had a startling realization, somewhat traumatic and funny realization here, that I'm pretty sure this is the first funeral sequence that we've seen throughout the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen. I think excluding maybe Yuji's grandpa, but that was more of a cremation. You only see the remains. You don't actually see any funerals in Jujutsu Kaisen. I think this is actually the first one. So, Gege's evolution, it continues. Anyway, moving further into the back end of the chapter here, we get to see everyone sort of discussing their plans, Dora, and what comes next, basically, for them after this match was settled. But more importantly, we get to see what I believe is the start of what becomes the difference in between Cross and Muru here, as we see Cross reflecting on Dora's words and coming to the conclusion that it's impossible to be neighbours with these kinds of people. But the gang here is seen discussing what comes next, and they're approached by Dabura and a hooded figure. Now, Dora tells them that Dora has actually left them something. Now, this certainly is crackpot theory crafting of mine here, but I would be willing to bet that this hooded figure is actually Dabura's sister, and if this is indeed his sister, it means that something happened that allowed Dabura's sister to be freed. Maybe they only held her captive till the duel was done. Maybe he went psycho, got her out himself. I'd like to hear your guys' theories in the comments down below. However, we do find out that Dora here had been saving away a legitimate shit ton of Muru rocks, and it's here that Muru has a little bit of a flashback to a conversation that he had when they were younger. Quote, "A village, a town, or a city, they're all made by the dreamt up ideals of someone else from the past. Even if I kick the bucket someday, this canal will eternally remain, and then someone else will come along and make Lumelia into an even better place." Now, I know you're going to shake your head here and say, man, old man Weeb just repeating himself. But cycles, Jujutsu Kaisen, cycles. You know what I'm saying? Is this not bar for bar the same ideals that Gojo had in place for him and his students? He wanted to make the world a better place for those who came after him. Cycles, people. Cycles. I will continue to scream this from the rooftops until it's drilled into people's heads. Anyways, it's here that Muru seems to activate the Muru stones and tells the gang that this won't be for nothing. Not at all. This just like the canal is the path Dora carved for the future of Lumelia. And it's here that Muru decides that they should leave Sumerian and find a planet where they can live peacefully. This is where Dabura tells them that he'll also go with them and protect them, and that's how we see the foundation of their ship being built, the rocks of Muru from their ship. Now, this brings me back to the point where Cross was talking about his dad clutching onto a rock of Muru here, which now gives it new meaning, because if these rocks can be manipulated to build a ship here, potentially that rock might have harnessed cursed energy that maybe his dad was trying to harness to maybe fight back one last time, or maybe rebuild his house. I'm not entirely sure, but I do think that this addition of these Muru rocks here is very, very interesting. It's very interesting to me for a few reasons, because these rocks from the ship here seem to be controlled by cursed energy, which makes me wonder if these same rocks can be controlled by humans with cursed energy, or if fundamentally Luca and cursed energy are the same but different. Maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe there's like a slight difference here. But this chapter also makes me want to reread the previous 8 chapters, because I would imagine it would serve to sort of recontextualize a lot of Cross and Maru's interactions. More so Cross's interaction with Yuka in chapter 7 here. I think that this chapter 9 would definitely put an entirely different spin in how Cross interacts with the humans here. But anyways, that is everything from me. If you've not already, please be sure to like and subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram, support me on Patreon if you like what I'm doing here. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Much fucking love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.